Hello and welcome to the Loving Compassion podcast with Giselle. We believe that love and compassion have the power to heal our lives and our world. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more amazing content. Today we're talking about the power of grief with Aline C Davis, who's a creative, mentor, and an Akashic channel who walks alongside sensitive souls at the beginning of their remembering. After a life-changing accident and years of learning to live with central sensitivity syndrome, she now shares her experience as a guide through inner work and self-healing. Through her podcast, Accepting Your Sensitivity, and practices rooted in ritual and story, she offers a gentle invitation towards deeper remembering, self-acceptance, and authenticity. Please join me in welcoming Aline.
Thank you.
I so resonated with your story. So, as I was mentioning before the recording, my dog passed away. It'll be November. It will be a year in November. And we had him till he was 13, and he was a Doberman Shepherd. Did I do everything I could have done? And I felt so guilty, and I did not expect that. In the beginning, I didn't even want a dog. I never had a dog growing up, and it was my husband who wanted a dog, but that dog became my dog. He was like my Velcro dog.
My baby girl passed, it was 2 weeks today, and lots of people would say, oh, 2 weeks. She came back yesterday, forever. Oh, God. And this is my first recording of any kind without her. I mentioned to you a moment ago, I went live and I read a poem afterwards, but actually doing a recording that is to inspire and help people. This is my first one. And I asked if she can be here and help me. We'd had a really gorgeous day. She was giving me signs anyway, and in the morning, something happened, and I contacted my own vet, and I said, please, can you come and see her? And he didn't have a car. And I said, I don't want to put her in the car because I don't want to disturb her. She had a little accident, let's just put it that way. And then I cleaned her up, and we were lying on my bed. I had all my beautiful music on from my spiritual mentors, their incredible healing music, which she loves. And we listened to, I was in a workshop with my mentors last year in Germany. We were listening to the first half of that, and we both fell asleep. And then I woke up, she woke up, I stretched out, and I was like, it just felt really normal. And then the vet messaged me and said, I don't like the fact that she's sleeping and that you think she's got anemia. You need to take her to another vet. And I was like, I don't want to put her in the car.
Yeah.
And then I jumped on the bandwagon of his fear rather than just stepping back and going, do you know what? She's comfortable. We are in this space, this beautiful space. And at that point, I was feeling she was getting better because she was starting to walk. She was at one end of the bed and she walked towards me and then just lay down next to me. Normally she was here. So we lay, and as I said, we fell asleep together. And then we would always touch paws. I'd always sing to her, and it didn't matter where she was in the house, she would find me because she loved the vibration of singing. So wherever I was, wherever she was, she could feel me singing, and she'd be like 10 seconds later, she's there, or she's either on my lap or in my face, wherever I was singing. And so I've made my peace with it because I don't know what would have happened. We got to this other vet, which was a half an hour drive away, unfortunately, 40 minutes in the end. And it was a very hot day. And I've never been apart from her and the vet. And they said, we need to do a blood test. I said, could you give her something first, please? So what had happened was my vet had said, go now. And I said, don't I need an appointment? They're usually closed between 2 and 5. I said, no, they know you're coming. And I said, who is it? Is it somebody, that I know? Yes, they're going to be there. And what transpired was when I arrived, one of the assistants had a go at me because she'd been trying to call me to say, don't come because such and such a person won't be there. However, I can now see this other person who I've never met before, who did not have, and I don't want to go into judge mode. It happened how it happened. And so this person is saying to me, before we give her anything, it's better to see what's going on. I said, can you not just give her something like vitamins or something? Or because my vet had said, just get her on a drip and she'll be fine. That's what my vet had said to me. So I had this monologue going on. And I kept saying, and because it was in Spanish, I live in Spain. I'm very understood with my Spanish. They just don't. When you're in a situation like that, and none of my family were here, I was just on my own with my baby girl, and there was nobody that I knew. There was the lady who had been there when we'd been there 2 days ago for just a normal procedure, which I will always be going, why did we do that? And I said to her, if I'm not allowed to come for this blood test, because I said I want to be with her, she'll need me there. I'm her home.
Yeah.
And he wouldn't let me go in there with the blood test. I said to the woman who had a go at me when I arrived, because she was there before, I said, can you just please be with her? At least she knows you. So when she came back, because I had to go move the car as well, which was like, oh my, I parked in a disabled space. I had to go move the car.
Yeah,
And I was
you
like, I
gotta
can't
move
move
it.
her. So I was running around anyway. So I came back and she was just very quiet in her basket. So I put the healing music on. I was sending her energy. She was traumatized. So then he came back with the results and they weren't great. And I said, I don't want to do it here. It's really important that she's at home with her family, her fur family, so they can understand. And I still had this thing going through from my vet saying drip. And I said, let's give her a drip beforehand, before we go. And that didn't go very well. Anyway, I don't know why I'm talking about this because it's awful. So that didn't go very
Okay.
well. And
Yeah.
then I was on the phone to various family members saying, because he was saying, this is it, basically. That's what the results have come back with. And me being me, I'm like, actually, no, because if I can get you back in the house and I can do some healing with you, all of
Hmm.
this, I
Yeah.
know I can help you. I know I can heal you. I know I've done it loads of times. We've been here before. And she started with what I now know is called the death rattle. And it was because this drip was going in her. And it was horrendous. It was awful because I've never seen her like that. And it would be forever, did I do the right thing? Because she could have just passed in her sleep next to her mum on my bed. I don't know. And then I was like, actually, it couldn't have happened any other way. We've had some kind of agreement, some kind of contract, because I said to her, and we'd had a conversation, and I said, "You're here until 19, meaning 19 years old, yes?" And she said, "Yeah, I'm here until 19." And she passed on the 18th of September, and she was collected on the 19th because I had her overnight. That was the other thing. The vet tried to tell me I couldn't take her. Said, this is illegal. I said, I don't care. She's coming with me. I'm not leaving her here. So as she's passed and I'm singing to her, he's standing there with a stethoscope waiting to see if the injections. And I said, could you please just give me a few
Yeah.
minutes? And then I also said to him, I may look very strong and very like this at the moment. I said, I'm on the floor. I said, I have to drive back and I have to keep myself together. Everybody else who knows me that's not here will understand this. And he finally got it. I don't know why I'm talking about this.
And I went through the same feelings that I so resonated with what you were saying. He was like Velcro dog. He had health issues because we adopted him from the pound and he had so many issues and I was constantly dealing with his issues and I'm sure I caused some of myself in terms of being that helicopter parent, not with my kids, but with my dog, which is interesting. Probably because my kids wouldn't allow that. And when he passed, so he died of a seizure disorder. Like he got really bad seizures and he would snap out of them, but it was horrific. It like to see him
Mm,
thrashing about. He was on medication and we were monitoring it. I felt an extraordinary amount of guilt.
mm,
Just I started thinking about all the things that I could have done better. Like it's funny how we do that to ourselves. Like even the
mhm,
last day, on the day, he was like whining to go outside. And I was like, oh, I'll take you outside in a minute because I was distracted about something. And then soon after, he had a seizure on his bed. Maybe if I had taken him out, maybe he had some toxins and he couldn't. And it's amazing how you make yourself crazy. You internalize it, you blame yourself because they're just so unconditionally loving and they can't speak to you in the same way. And I felt so bad for a little while and I allowed myself to sit with those feelings,
mm,
but it does not feel great. And I
mm,
realize now, having not had him for a year, and it was difficult because there's so many habits you create. So when I would get home, I'd be like, oh, I got to take Baron out. Oh, wait, there's no Baron to take out.
mm.
I'm slowly realizing all the gifts he gave me, the gift of
Yeah.
unconditional love, the gift of awareness. And I realize now he couldn't have left any other way. It would have been
Yeah.
like so drawn out and so difficult for me. He had to go that way. It could not have been any other way. And in fact, the last seizure didn't stop. We had to take him, and I was desperately, like you, trying to call vets and somebody who would find, because it was after hours. We had a vet who was like a traveling vet. She was amazing, but the seizure itself became way too much for her to manage. She didn't just have that experience, so we ended up having to go somewhere else, and we had to take him somewhere to put him down. And I was like you, I was hysterical, like hysterical, because there's other people there with their dog, and I think their dog was having some sort of procedure, and you hear me be hysterical. We're talking hysterical. I'm making a spectacle of myself about my dog, and I'm like, don't put my dog down. And I'm like, and those people are like, oh my God, what's happening here? Because they're waiting for their dog, and their dog seems to be out. Guess they're doing something to it. I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
But
Sorry you had that. Yeah.
yeah, thank you. And I appreciate that. So that's why I was really resonating with your story. They let us take our dog home, like in terms of we could bury it in our dog in a backyard. And that's what we did. Is that different where you are?
Well,
You're not allowed to
I
do that?
think without, and I'm not casting aspersions because I've spoken about this with my super vet afterwards. He
Yeah.
was just like, no, Aline, because this other vet, I could just call him the other vet,
Yeah. Yeah.
like seconds afterwards, because I was saying, okay, I'm going now. And he said, you can't take her. And I said, and my whole family were like, yeah, I bet that went down well. And I said, I'm taking her. And he said, it's illegal. If you get stopped by the police, you'll get a fine. And I was like, who is going to stop me?
Yeah.
Really? Like a random. Anyway, so it was just one of those moments because I am a huge believer in we create how we feel, we create what's happening around us. And my frustration, and I completely resonate with what you're saying as well so much. My frustration was if I had just listened, if I had just taken a breath and not jumped on the bandwagon of fear of my super vet and said, okay, maybe we wait and get her to the vet this afternoon. And then I've also felt into it. And it's what happens if she started showing signs in the house and I couldn't help her and there was nothing that I could do? So I am at the stage of it couldn't have happened any other way. I am there. So thank you for saying that.
Yeah.
I am there now. I just feel because she arrived home yesterday forever, and this is my first recording without her on my lap
Yeah.
or near me. Crikey. It's here I go again. And as I was saying to you before, what has been so beautiful with my family members, she said to me, Aline, I cried for a year. I said, good
Mm.
luck.
Mm.
She said, I cried every day for a year. And there was an association that she went to, there was a singing group that she went to, and nobody said anything. And there was the chap came up to her after a year and said, and he'd never really, didn't really, wasn't one to talk and chat. And he just said, you're better. After a year, he said, you're better.
Mm.
And I just thought that was so moving that he saw my family member was in so much pain, was very different, was very withdrawn, and just noticed and
Yeah.
didn't say, are you all right? Can I do anything? Just left her to be in her space. And then as she was better, he let her know. And I just thought that was so gorgeous. And also it's allowed me, there's a certain family member that couldn't talk to me for 2 days because they were so upset to see me this way, and British, stiff upper lip,
Yeah.
masculine, that kind of thing. What it did allow me to do, I do feel it brought our family a little bit closer together because we all shared moments that we haven't shared before. And I was diagnosed with central sensitivity syndrome about 9 years now. And when I was younger, I used to cry quite a lot anyway. It's part of being an empath. I
Mm.
now
Yeah.
know and guide others in that respect. And I remember when I was diagnosed with central sensitivity syndrome, it's like you're gonna feel. I was like, I already do. So it was labeling what was
Something you were
already
already
there.
experiencing. Yeah.
Yeah, and I remember because I was very teary. I had an accident 9 years ago, and my whole life changed basically. And I remember this particular family member going, "What's wrong? why are you crying? I said, there doesn't need to be anything wrong. I just sometimes I'm going to be like this because everything is heightened even more than it was before.
Yeah.
And so,
Can totally relate to that.
yeah, and I got to a point where, okay, I can't really cry in front of anybody because I don't want anyone to feel that something's wrong with me. And I have just been crying, let's just put it that way.
Yeah.
And as I said, with one of my family members, we've never cried together. We were on the phone for an hour and a half crying together and sharing, and she was sharing with me. And I understand for some people, oh, that's a beautiful image that I'm seeing just out the door at the moment. Wow. And I understand for some people, it's like, why are you showing your grief on Facebook or on Instagram or because at the beginning, yes, it was very private. One of my best friends was with me when the vet came in the morning, the next morning, because I did a little Egyptian send off for her. And those photographs won't be shared. And my friend also, she took photographs of me holding my girl and bawling my eyes out because I held her for 2.5 hours, I would say, whilst my friend was there, because I felt, because she was so gorgeous. She arrived and I had the door closed and I said, just to let you know, Cleo is my beautiful girl's name. Cleo is here and I don't want you to feel uncomfortable. She's like, I don't feel uncomfortable at all. I think it's beautiful. So
Yeah.
she just held me. She allowed me to be in my space. I went into my medicine wheel with Cleo. I was crying my eyes out. I was singing to her. And I think possibly at that moment I was in shock because it happened so suddenly and it was all a little bit dramatic. And then I'm sure you'll resonate with this. You will, you've already said it's habits. She would jump from each side in the morning to wake me up. I didn't need an alarm
Yeah.
clock. It's all of that.
Yeah.
Thank you for allowing me to share and holding this beautiful space. I didn't expect to come on and cry my eyes out.
I wanted to talk about grief
Yeah.
and how uncomfortable we are with it. It's amazing how, and I know cultures take grief differently, but we seem to
Mm.
believe that there's a time limit on grief when the truth of the matter is it's a journey and it's a journey that takes people different time, different space, whatever needs to happen. I'm still working on myself, right? Like my self love, my self compassion, all of those things. And nobody says, hey, you should be compassionate by now for yourself, right?
Yeah.
But we kind of have this misconception about grief that it needs to be, about grief, that it needs to be brief, but that it needs to
Yeah.
not be seen. What are some
Yeah.
of the messages you had received about grief growing up?
Grief growing up, there was a family member who passed on my 8th birthday, and a family member went away
Yeah.
had to leave and come back for my birthday. We were on holiday in Spain, and my family member had to go away and then return, and you wouldn't have known. You wouldn't have known. There was no sitting down and discussing it. Our furry family, they were there again up until in my teens. And I think, yeah, so I was never really, grief was never really explained. And I believe that grief can be in so many ways as well. It's when, and this is what I help people with as sensitive people, when we finally realize our sensitivity is a gift and we start taking off the masks of people pleasing and performing, it's actually,
Yeah.
this is who I really am. There can be grief for the old us.
Yeah.
And that's quite a difficult one to explain because people can think, why on earth are you so upset about that? It's allowing people the space to have whatever they need. And it's like I mentioned before about trying to be in a no judgment zone about that vet. I'm working on that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
Yeah,
recent, right? Like
yeah.
it's interesting. And I love what you said because we have so many judgments about how we should feel or not feel and the
Mm,
timing of how we should feel it. But the truth of the
mm,
matter is, the more we allow our feelings to be there and allow ourselves to feel the feelings, the quicker they pass. And it's not that they have to be quick, but just they have less reason to linger on for such a long
yeah,
time. But
yeah.
grieving in isolation is so lonely and it's so difficult. Whereas when you can come together to grieve together, to celebrate together, I think that helps grief feel a little bit lighter. Like you said, that the grief of losing Cleo led you to have closer moments with your family. What a gift.
Yes.
What an opportunity to be able to talk about maybe shared experiences that hadn't happened, and how this particular negative experience or difficult experience became a vehicle for a closeness and a gathering of people in your life. And I often don't think that we think of grief that way. I can't think of a time, and it could be that I'm misremembering. I can't think of a time where my family, I mean, we have grieved together, but it was like, do you ever feel like it was a whole bunch of individuals in the same room?
Yes.
Right. So I think there was support for one another. And yet at the same time, maybe it was me. I just felt like I was an individual grieving in a group and not grieving together. But I have had family come together for grieving. I just don't remember feeling, and maybe this is me even judging that experience. Maybe it was just the fact that I didn't feel supported, or so it could just be that. But grief is an interesting one. It's one we don't like to experience, right? I have made this mistake. And so, like, asking people, are you going to get another dog soon? Are you going to get another pet soon? Because I didn't know how to manage those difficult feelings until it happened to me. And I was like, don't even ask me about another pet.
I'm going to kill you. Yeah.
Because I can't even think of another pet. Like when people say to me, oh, do you want another dog? And I know my kids want another dog. I want my dog.
Yes. Yeah.
I miss the being that I lost. And that's what I was grieving, those moments that I had, the moments where he would lie down and I would look at him and be like, oh, you're just so beautiful and perfect. And he was such a mild mannered dog. Like he was like, he was just such a old soul. He didn't get bothered by things. Yeah, he was a bit whiny, and that's the Doberman in him. But I just remember how much joy he brought me. And so he taught me about joy and unconditional love. And yeah, so for me, but we do that because I've done it. I'm being vulnerable. I'm admitting like when people are like, oh, they lost a dog or a pet or whatever. And I'm like, oh, are you going to get another one? Because you don't know what to say. You don't know. You're so uncomfortable. You don't know what to say until you're there. And then you're like, yeah, don't say that.
Yeah. Mark that one off. I'm very lucky in the sense that I have beautiful other furry members around me. It's not Cleo. And actually one of my family members she said, you're going to grieve Cleo like a person. And I didn't respond to that because I'm grieving Cleo like the beautiful being that she is.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting you saying about you felt that you were grieving individually because everybody has their own way, don't they? Everybody has their own process. And it was interesting for me was I had pain in my shoulder and going all the way down my arm for 3 weeks before she passed. And it was as if, because that's the heart area, and couldn't work out what was going on. It was as if my body was already preparing for what was happening,
Wow.
and I couldn't move or do anything. And luckily, I'd already made the decision that for July and August and it turned out September, I was sharing previous podcasts from a couple of years ago. So I had all that organized in advance. Obviously, no such thing as coincidence, as a synchronicity. Yeah. So I had this whole pain going through me. And then it wasn't until after a couple of days I was like, oh, after she passed, I was like, oh, okay, so you're giving me that pain to get me ready for the real pain going on in there. And just talking about the group grieving, it was when a family member, again, don't want to be too personal, a family member passed. And because of what had happened when I was younger, and I hadn't seen any reaction from this family member about their family member passing. I was on holiday with an ex-boyfriend. That's another story for another time. And I got the news, and it was okay. We need to get a flight. We need to get back. And because not because I had been there, I just expected that partner would come with me, and they didn't. And when I arrived, I was feeling, because I had been bawling my eyes out, and this person, this ex-partner who I was with, could not deal with it, could not deal with it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
No way. I mean, because it was 2 days, and then before I could go back, before I could get on the flight, and I was just crying, 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 because as empaths, even on the phone, even just energetically with our family, we just sponge everything in.
Yeah.
I was feeling what I was feeling, absolutely. And so when I arrived to the place to go where this family member's house had been, I expected everybody to be stiff upper lip and not crying. And actually, it was really beautiful, because another family member had said to me, I've never seen them cry. When I was 8, they didn't say to me when I was 8, it was years ago, because I was saying, what happened? I have no real recollection of it. And they had also been away. They were in Spain. They were on holiday in Spain. And what had happened that night, one of my family members, they were out for dinner, and one of my family members started feeling really edgy. And they were in Andalusia, which is where I am now. And there's a magic about Andalusia. It's on incredible ley lines. There's a lot of magic going on here.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a lot. And they were driving back, and there was a dog in the road, and they stopped. And then this dog, the way they both explained it is, this dog was like a big kind of greyhoundy, not really greyhound, that had my grandfather's eyes, was trying to get in the car.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, was trying to get in the car, and it was like more like a silhouette trying to get in the car, and then there wasn't anything there. And one of my family members saw this, and they, you know,
Wow.
so
Yeah.
they are a lot more accepting of who I am. Not that it matters. They are a lot more accepting of who I am now they've experienced various things.
Yeah.
And it was just really beautiful. And so they're talking about this. And then what happened? They got back to their hotel, and there was a phone call, and it was the news. And so one of my family members, I had been really like anxious and antsy, saying she wanted to get out of the car before the dog arrived. And it was obviously that passing time.
Yeah.
And so when I arrived, I'm just going to say, when I arrived in Scotland from Cyprus, and like I said, we were all in different places. My
Yeah.
grand's okay, yeah, I'm going to go now, because he was a complete joker. He when they were younger, they would play tricks on the tax man. He would get things like, get a sign on there and say, "Kick me, for I have sinned." Put it on. He was a complete
That's
joker,
lovely.
and so
Yeah.
he was going to go when we were all in different places. He was always playing practical jokes. One of the things he did to my gran, which is an absolute, I love this story, was they were going to pull up the patio, and my gran lifted up a slab, and there was a £5 note under it. She said, "Oh my God, look at that! There's a £5 note. Oh my God!" And she lifted up all the slabs, and my Grabs was absolutely falling about laughing.
That's one way to get somebody to do the
Oh,
work.
there are going to be loads more underneath. And
Mm.
then another thing that he did was he switched it was just silly things. He switched the Hoover
Mm.
off from upstairs when she was Hoovering. And
Mm.
then she went to check it, and then it didn't work. And then it started working. So he was switching it on and off, taking the plug on and out. And so then at one point she's doing this, trying to quickly get the Hoovering done before the. Anyway, I don't know why I'm saying. It's just fun. It's just silly
Yeah.
things. So he was a complete joker. And then for him to turn up as a dog with the eyes. And then, as I said, when I arrived at his house, and I expected everybody to just be my closest family. Yes,
Yeah.
stoic. And they weren't. And I actually said to one of my family members, I said, "I thought you said you'd never seen one of my family members cry before." And he said, "Oh no, she's been crying." And I was like, "Brilliant, great."
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's because we're all going a bit more towards the divine feminine, or it's because they were in, when the situation happened when I was 8, they would have been in their mid-30s. So whether it's with experience, it's like, I don't give a monkey's what anybody thinks. I'm just going to do what I need to do. Might have been that, not trying to keep up with the Joneses and show that we're all absolutely fine and wonderful. Sorry, I keep looking out the window because there's lots going on out there.
That's all right.
And
Yeah.
yeah, so I think that was very beautiful. And even then, I felt guilty as well because I hadn't seen my grandfather for so long. And I thought, can I grieve? Is it
Mm,
okay for me to?
mm,
Because I've spoken to him, but I haven't actually been in his presence for about a year. Is that all right for me? Even then, it's
yeah,
like as you
yeah.
said before, there's like these almost like these terms and conditions that we put upon ourselves because we're worried what other people will think of us. And actually, nobody cares because they're all just dealing with what they're trying to
With
deal with.
themselves, yeah. Yeah, I love what you
So,
said. It's interesting. I was thinking about many of our ancestors, the people from our history, they dealt
mm,
with really difficult things like war and like
yeah,
famine and all of these
yeah,
things. And many of them did not know how to hold space for their difficult feelings. They weren't taught that. They were
mm,
taught to suppress
mm,
that. And that's passed on. And
mm,
so many parents needed their children to control their behaviors so that the parents could feel okay because they couldn't hold
yeah,
it. And so I think of my father. I'd never seen my father cry, like throughout growing up, never seen it. The only time I remember seeing my father cry was when my grandmother died, his mom,
yeah,
right? And
mm,
so to watch your dad cry is disconcerting when you have never seen him cry, really. But it also made me really reflect on what a disservice we do to each other in not enabling us to have the various emotions that we come equipped with. We have tear
mm,
ducts because we're supposed to
mm,
cry. We're
mm,
supposed to release that. It's a cleansing, it's a release. But to feel like you have to hold all of that pain, all of that sadness, all of those experiences
mm,
because it's not allowed or you feel you're going to get judged really does harm us. And the level to which we dehumanize ourselves or prevent
mm,
ourselves from feeling those emotions is the extent to
mm,
which we allow other people to express those emotions as well, right?
mm. Yeah, completely.
Yeah.
And because I mentioned before, there was a certain family member who couldn't see me cry because he was of floods of tears. I asked him one day, I said, you don't really like Cleo, do you? He said, I don't think she likes me. And I said, you let them all the others sit on your lap, but not her. He said, yeah, but she digs her claws in. And so his reaction, I was so surprised by his reaction. Bless him. He was devastated, absolutely
Yeah.
devastated. And he couldn't speak to me for 2 days because all I was doing was crying. He hated to see me like that.
Yeah. I've had to look at my history as I'm growing and evolving. And I used to have such a
Mm,
resentment for my ancestors. I did. I resented all the trauma, all the drama, all of the issues, all the negative conditioning, and all the things that I
mm,
felt had been passed down. But when I was able to release that and forgive that, I was able to bear witness at how much they had to endure and their strength and their extraordinary ability to overcome and not
yeah,
either. The fact that I'm here is because they kept moving forward. And so
yeah,
their ability and their wisdom and their trying their best, I think it's something that enabled me to free myself from that resentment, from that lack of forgiveness, from that seeing it only one
oh,
sided as
yeah,
these are very negative things. Like we're so good at talking about intergenerational trauma, and it is real, it is true. But we don't talk about intergenerational resiliency, intergenerational compassion, intergenerational love that's still
mm,
there even in its own way, and if it's a
mm,
messy, it doesn't show up perfect, it doesn't show up the way we want it to, but there was a willingness to
yeah,
overcome, to survive, to make it to. And when I acknowledged that, I felt lighter. I felt, oh, there's space now, there's space to create, there's space now where I can rely on those ancestors and their history to help me be strong, move forward in a more
yeah.
positive way.
As you were speaking, something just came through, and it reminded me. I was in a kind of group medium session, and a family member came through, an ancestor, and said, "You're very similar to me. You have so many more opportunities." And that's just that. It was that feeling of just being reminded of that, is that they were the witch in the kitchen.
Oh,
And
yeah,
so thank you for sharing.
yeah,
Beautiful. Because as an example, on one side, one of my family members had PTSD from the war and so was violent.
yeah.
and it would never have been diagnosed. So the effect on everybody else.
Many
So, and
people after
it's
the war
that,
weren't supported. They weren't
no,
supported with mental health.
no,
They were just brought back. And
yeah,
so none of those
absolutely,
people knew how to emotionally regulate themselves or teach their
absolutely
children
not.
how to.
Yeah,
And yes, many of them drank, many of them were violent.
yeah,
Many of the women in my family were so strong. They were like super, super strong, but they felt they had to
mm,
be.
mm,
And I always admired that, but I didn't realize until very recently how much admiration I had even for the males in our family and what they went through and how they were just doing the best they could,
mm,
even though it seemed like they might have been the pivot point of why the women suffered. Like they also had a will to survive, to live, to move
yeah,
forward, doing the best they thought they were doing at the time was a very
yeah,
clear message that it came through, which for me, which was I thought I was doing it right. I thought I was doing something better than the generation before. I thought I was helping. I thought I
mm,
was trying to make people stronger, better, make better decisions. But it's easy to judge. But when you're able to see that with the eyes of kindness and love, then I think you realize
absolutely.
that
Mm.
there's
So
such
trust.
extraordinary strength.
Yeah, incredibly. And it's really beautiful what you're talking about as well, because recently a family member has opened up to me. We were just sat at the table one day, a little bit about their childhood, and they've never, ever have mentioned that. And another family member just kind of went, "Oh, you're all right now." And it was just really interesting. So I encouraged that family member to continue,
Yeah.
and they did continue. And it's like you were saying before about when we suppress so much, it's just not good for us. And I'm not saying that we need to be all gloom and doom all the time. The worst thing, in my opinion, that we can be is Pollyanna. I'm fine, everything's wonderful, rainbows, unicorns, absolutely fabulous. That's a mask. So I felt it was really beautiful of this family member to talk about their first childhood experience that they remember
Yeah.
when they were
Yeah.
3. And it
Oh,
was,
it's
yeah.
powerful.
And it was, I won't share it, you can imagine. And
Yeah.
that was their first childhood memory. And it was
Wow.
so beautiful. It was such a beautiful moment. And it's just reminded me actually, because I'd cooked lunch that day. And when I have beautiful healing music from my mentors, and when I'm cooking lunch, I'm putting love in there and it's all good
Right.
things. I'm vegan as well, so it's all yumminess. And oftentimes when they have my food, I just thought, again, it's not about me. It was about the spirits around me and helping me, and possibly this person who's my
Yeah.
ancestor, who was basically a kitchen witch. And yeah, and then this person, it just allowed them to open up. I'm just
Yeah.
looking over here because here's one of my cats. Hi, Teens. You
Mm.
coming to say hello? Do you want to
I
say
was thinking
hello?
of that movie Chocolat. The
Oh,
power of
yes.
chocolate, yeah, and the
Yeah.
impact. I think the other person's reaction of you're right now, it's people's inability to be able to hold space for difficult
Yeah.
conversations. And we
Yeah.
can't blame them. Really haven't been taught how to have difficult conversations, how to
No, it's
emotionally
under the
regulate
carpet,
those
under the carpet.
emotions.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're like, stop
Yeah.
it, don't do that. Like even in the
Mm.
school system, like the kids aren't just taught how to manage. And this is why we have such a cancel culture. It's like
Yeah.
that you say something that I don't like, and therefore I'm just going to shut you down. It's the inability
Absolutely.
to hold that
Mm.
space. And
Mm.
so the willingness has to come from a willingness to sit in the uncomfortable. And that's where going back to the whole issue of grief is so uncomfortable. You don't know when it's going to end. It
No.
feels terrible in the moment, but at the same time, there's so many gifts that come from sitting and allowing that grief to be there.
Yes.
And it also
So, so
helps
much.
you relate to other people's journeys as
Mm.
well, the more you do
Mm.
that with yourself. Yeah.
Mm. Mm.
Yeah.
Beautiful. One of the things that I have been doing, so if anybody's listening, I'm sure they know how to do this anyway, is sometimes when it starts to take over, the tears and the grief and the missing, I just take a breath and I remember her lying, her energy lying across me. And that just brings me back. And I understand, and it reminds me that she chose to be here. And and reminds me that there's only, was it two things certain in life, death and taxes, you
Yeah.
know, and it was her time, and that's why I wrote the poem, and I shared the poem crying my eyes out. So there is beauty in sharing. And when I shared the poem, I was a bit like, oh, what are people going to think? For the day after I'd put it up, there's like, I'm going to delete it. I'm going to delete it. It's like, don't delete it, Aline. Try not to delete it. And I didn't. And because she's so much part of everything,
Mm.
there's photographs of me with her everywhere. And even when I'm like creating little posts, I suppose, there's with a beautiful pink and gold that are my colors for everything. And there's a white silhouette of a cat. That's her. She's in everything. She's helped so many people. She's
Mm.
helped so many people. So it felt so right, even though it felt so uncomfortable
Yeah.
to read that poem. At the time, I was in the medicine wheel. I said, "We're really going to do this? Yes, we're going to do this." So somebody was watching me live and didn't comment, and that's okay. It was probably too much for them, and then didn't say anything. And I just thought, that's fine. And then in the next couple of days, I suppose, again, because we create how we're feeling. I kept seeing posts everywhere of people losing their furry babies. It's
Mm.
eclipse season. I was like, oh my God. And we're in a year 9 as well. So I'm not saying
Mm.
everybody's listening
Ending
here
and
that
beginnings. Yeah.
that's going to happen. It's just beautiful endings. It's beautiful closings. And that felt a beautiful way to honor her and close her chapter. So, you know, what you're saying about when we're sharing, it's honoring as well. It's
Yeah.
honoring them. It really is. Yeah. Yeah.
And I
Beautiful.
think the more that we share, and I think the reason why you were guided to share is because we're taught to be so inauthentic. We're taught to
Yeah.
be so controlled, protected. But like you go back to vulnerability, moments of vulnerability reminds us that we're human, that sometimes we feel vulnerable. And being vulnerable is not the same as feeling vulnerable. We can feel vulnerable and act protected. But being vulnerable is a willingness to share your humanity, a willingness to open up your heart and say, I'm grieving. I'm
Mm,
struggling. I
mm,
am, I don't feel seen or heard. Maybe I don't feel worthy of being loved.
mm,
I'm struggling with abundance. Whatever you want to share, there are people that are going through that same thing that because nobody wants to share, feel very alone. So they
yeah.
feel alone in their grief. They feel alone in
Yeah.
their vulnerability. But the more you're willing to share that, there is power in grief. There's power in vulnerability.
Mm.
And being able to share that connects us to one another. I don't think you can have close relationships unless you're willing to be vulnerable with one another. Unless you're,
Absolutely. 1,000,000%.
yeah,
Yes.
exactly. So
Yeah.
if it's just for show, then you can't ever really get to the depth, even
Mm,
if it means some level of conflict.
mm,
You have to be willing to be authentically yourself, to share your vulnerability, and be okay with that in order
mm.
to have that closeness. I don't think you can have it without being willing to go there. I think otherwise you're just protecting yourself against the world.
I completely agree. It's masks, isn't it? It's that societal mask of I'm fine. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I was pushed to share because one of the things I talk about so much is be honest and real and accept your
Mm.
shadows and accept your emotions and accept your vulnerability. So it felt a bit like, I suppose, walking my talk, but that sounds like a little bit too, you know
Yeah,
what I
yeah, yeah.
mean?
I
Yeah.
do.
Is I encourage people to be really honest and raw and open because it's so important that everything that's being pushed down has a gentle embrace as it's coming up. And I just thought, yeah, I have watched it back a couple of times and I've cried a couple of times, and then now I can watch it and go, actually, that was really beautiful because Cleo was
Mhm.
there with me. I was in the medicine wheel. There's a gorgeous tree in the garden called the Tree of Love that naturally has a heart carved in by
Oh,
nature. And
beautiful.
that's where some of her ashes will be. And then wherever I go, because she traveled everywhere with me.
Yeah.
Our last trip was where I drove to France with her and we were walking in the vineyards together, remembering those beautiful times. And so what was really interesting is after I had read the poem and cried, it was the most grounded I'd felt and the most tired. And I was like, I can sleep now. So
Mm,
there is power in sharing. There's real power in sharing. And like you said about being authentic, it was authentic, raw. This is really what's going on, rather than not mentioning it. Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
absolutely.
yeah, absolutely. I was thinking as you were
Responsible.
talking, don't they have those things where you can use ashes to create a diamond? Have you heard of that?
Oh, I have heard of that. Actually. That's
Oh,
that's going to be my research for the next
yeah,
few days
yeah,
now.
yeah, for sure, for sure. Yeah.
Gorgeous. I love
So
that.
just have a few more questions. I'm switching things up. What's your
Okay.
definition of self-love?
Wow, that's a biggie. So, my definition of self-love is loving every single aspect of yourself, is accepting who you are, shadows and all, tempers and all, mood swings and all, accepting your body, being thankful for your body, because it's an incredible machine. And exactly as you've said before, is sharing who we really are with people and allowing people to see different sides of us and forgiving ourselves for what we think we've done and what we think we haven't done. That's a big one. And we're all working on it. It's a daily thing because so however many years ago you could hear someone, oh, she loves herself or he loves himself, or they love themselves. Good. Bloody
Yeah.
marvelous. What's wrong with that?
Yeah, we have this misconception about it being selfish or narcissistic, which is not true. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's good to be selfish because before we can help anybody else, we need to be in a space that we can
Hmm.
help other
That we
people, you
can,
know?
yeah,
So
that we can have love.
my, yeah, sorry, I didn't quite hear that because I think I was talking over you. Sorry.
Oh no, I was just going to say before we can have love for others, right?
Yes, yeah,
Hmm.
completely, completely. And I remember years ago, interesting you said about the vulnerability with relationships. It was, let's just say it was toxic. Let's just give it the
Yeah.
name. It was obviously an experience that I asked for. I learned a lot and I was being vulnerable. I was having a moment and I just said, I don't feel like I can really love myself at the moment because of whatever my size was or today. And this person, genius narcissist, just turned around and said, how can I love you then?
Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so it was really interesting that when you were talking about you feel like a relationship is about being vulnerable, etc., with the best people. And
Sure.
I would say self-love also is making sure that you're surrounded by people who absolutely have got you in any
Mm,
situation, and you equally have them showing up. You're allowing people to see you exactly as you are
yeah.
and
Love
making
that.
sure that you're surrounded with people who are on your vibratory level. And
Mm,
this is something I talk about quite a lot is even if you're starting to remember who you are and changes start happening, you're not changing who you are, you're remembering who you are, that you
mm,
keep those people around you who are championing you on to be your
mm.
authentic, true self. And then it's saying thank you to those who are uncomfortable and you've had various conversations. It's saying thank you for being in my life and loving yourself enough to walk away.
Love that. Final question. Where can people find you? Where can they work with you?
Oh, people can find me. I would just say, just keep it simple because there's so many various places where I am. The easiest way to find me is on align-with-Aline.com, and everything is on there. So the podcast is on there, the how to work with me, mentoring, coaching sessions, one-to-one sessions, and also my self-healing journeys and self-healing courses are on there. It's all there.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
And if people would like to just get in touch with me personally, and I do mean this, they can email me directly at love@alignwithaline.com as well.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you so much for being on the
Thank
show.
you
So
so much.
appreciate it. And thank you, everyone who tuned in for another episode of the Loving Compassion podcast with Giselle.